Welcome to the Bros of Gardening. I'm your host, Mike Westphal, joined always by Daniel Van Dyke, my co-host. How you doing today?
I'm doing good, buddy. We're rolling right along, enjoying this weather, and spring is certainly here, as we can all attest to, but we're enjoying it as always, and I'm pretty excited today. You know, I'm a big football fan. I know we've talked about that a few times, and I know this is I don't know exactly what we're doing, but I know we got a little draft going on here.
Something. Yeah. And Alex, of course, always helps guide us through these, so tell us what we're doing today.
So it's a little bit of a different episode today. And here's how it's going to work. We're going to do a plant draft. And so Mike and Daniel will each build a garden roster. You'll have your quarterback as your showstopper, a plant that carries the whole look. You'll have your running back, which is your workhorse. It'll be reliable all season. You have your wide receivers, your deep threat, fast grower, big payoff. Offense line, the supporting plants nobody talks about that make everything else work. The defense is your pest control, so weed prevention, anything that protects your yard. And the special teams is your wild card, the weird swing pick you're taking a chance on. Does that make sense?
Got it.
Let's do this.
Let's build some rosters here.
All
Mike,
right.
you want to kick us off?
So
quarterback.
With my quarterback. Okay. So I think of something that's, the showstopper, the star of the show. That's what you think about when you think of a quarterback, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with hydrangeas. It's a bit broad because there's a lot of different hydrangeas. But hydrangeas are awesome. I mean, now with the limelights, little limes, bobos, pufferfish, I mean, all you think of the white panicle style hydrangeas, which can grow in sun, now make this a showstopper that you can grow in full sun to shade. So it's a great pick. It's a winner for sure. It's the star of the show because in the summer, which is really when you're kind of really getting outside. So you think of like Mother's Day, you think of hydrangeas. Mother's Day is right around the corner. So that's when hydrangeas start to naturally bloom. And it's such a showstopper in the yard. You can use them in mass plantings. You can use them as specimen plants. You can do so many different things with them. And they just brighten up the yard, whether it's pink, if you've got more alkaline soil, or there's just varieties that are just pink. There's blue, which is what we typically get in this area, which is more of the acidic soil. And then that huge white bloom that you can get out of some of the panicle styles that I just mentioned. There's smooth hydrangeas like Incredible that get like the size of my head. And then there's oak leaf hydrangeas, which are one of my all-time favorites because not only are they cool when they bloom, they also have a great fall color. Plus, there's vining hydrangeas. So, I mean, I just officially won, right? Done?
And that's the end of the podcast.
That being said,
Daniel, what do you got?
As much as I like a hydrangea, Mike mentioned a specimen. So that's when I think of a showstopper, I think of a specimen. This is what you build your entire team around. This is your quarterback. So I'm going Patrick Mahomes. No, so I'm going to go with Japanese maples. And so we talk about Japanese maples a lot. And again, this really goes back to kind of that specimen. And so that's kind of how I start. When I'm doing a landscape design, I think, okay, we're going to pick the focal point, and then everything's going to build off of that. And don't get me wrong, hydrangeas can be a focal point. There's tree-form hydrangeas. But when you think of a Japanese maple, you are really, it's elegant, but it's also hardy. And what is the best attribute of your quarterback? Availability, which I associate with being hardy. And so Japanese maples, while they look extremely, fancy, they have kind of that Zen garden feel, all these things. They look very delicate at times, especially like the lace leaves, but they are actually a very hardy plant, a very hardy tree. They come in all different shapes and sizes. You can go upright, you can go weeping, you can go ones that grow well in the shade, green, red, coral bark, which is one of my favorite, a kind of a unique growth color and things like that. So Japanese maple to me is your true showstopper. And then you kind of build around that. And so, in true draft fashion, you always see quarterbacks taken in the first couple picks, and people even reached for quarterbacks because they're trying to find that centerpiece to build off of. And I don't think anything says that quite like Japanese maples. So that's why Japanese maples are my showstopper, and obviously why they're a better pick than hydrangeas. I'm a big fan of Japanese maples. They are very versatile. Love hydrangeas as well. It's a great pick. But to me, when I think of a showstopper, that's kind of the first thing that really jumps to mind, and something that I design around a lot. So, that comes out of using it quite often myself. Yeah, 4-season interest. I mean, absolutely. Increase the value of your property, increasing the value of your franchise. It's a good one. It's a tough one.
These are
far.
Great starts, I will say. All right, let's talk about the running backs. We're going to go with you, Daniel.
So you mentioned reliability, and so this won't come as much of a surprise to anybody who listens to our podcast or seen any of our videos. I'm going Goshiki Osmanthus. Everybody knows why I like them. I'll run back through a few of the key highlights. So reliable all season. To me, that says evergreen. You want something that you're going to have all season long. What I love about Goshiki Osmanthus is they have a very unique kind of leaf texture, but also foliage color. It's kind of that speckled green and yellow with a little bit of white. They do bloom, but not prolific bloomers by any means. That's not why you're going to buy them. So you get that reliability all season long. And then again, you go down to being reliable, you think hardy. What really made me fall in love with Goshiki Osmanthus is it was a plant I could stick anywhere and it would grow essentially in all different environments, sun, shade, problem spots. We can stick them in and you get kind of a unique look. And again, it doesn't look, you can do, I love, like Bordeaux hollies, things like that. These are called false hollies. They're kind of in that same vein, but they just have a little bit more of a unique texture, unique look to them. So you get a little bit more of that year-round attraction, but still the reliability and the hardiness of some of those old school hollies and things like that. And so when you talk about low maintenance, which is a very popular request in our industry and especially in the landscape industry right now, that's the first thing I think of is just what can I plant that you don't have to do a lot to, you don't have to constantly spray or do things like that. And Goshiki Osmanthus is one of those that, after things have died in this spot for a few years, I'm like, all right, let's go to the Osmanthus and see if we can solve it that way. So that would be my running back, somebody that I can turn around and hand the ball to when I need a tough couple yards. And so that's why I would go with Goshiki Osmanthus.
Yeah, it's a good pick. Good pick.
A good pick. Mike, what do you got?
I'm going to select with the second pick, boxwood. So boxwood is just the tried and true. Exactly. It is like the quintessential part of any, I think, landscape, any yard. Everybody knows what a boxwood is. Everybody knows what a boxwood looks like. And it just covers a lot of different things. He mentioned evergreen because you want this year-round thing. Yep. Typically when you're talking about foundation plantings, the backbone of your landscape, you think of some sort of evergreen. And so boxwoods fit that mold because they can fit so many different molds, meaning they can get so many different sizes, 2x2 up to 8x8. Yep. You can get a huge variety of size. They're extremely long lived. We're very close to Colonial Williamsburg and they're 350 years old there. Oh yeah. So, having a running back that can last that long is a great thing. Yeah. Do they have some downfalls? They have recently, but running backs are tough, right? So there's new varieties coming out that are more resistant to the wilt that has been hitting our area in different areas. So, they're resilient because they keep on coming back with new varieties and stronger ones. So boxwood is part of every landscape. And you think about it when you think about any design, whether it's classic, traditional design, cottage, it fits every mold, even like Mediterranean really styles. You can hedge them. You can make them into little boxes. You can make them round, you can make them pointed, you can do lots of different things. So very moldable to whatever you need.
It's a great pick. I love boxwoods. Anybody, again, I talk about what I design. You see a lot.
Well, we talked about recently in the beginning of the year. You showed me the new one.
Yep. New gen boxwood.
New gen. All right. Wide receiver. Mike.
Oh, this was a tough one. So it kind of was like a fast grower, big payoff. So I went with jasmine. So the vining jasmine, Madison jasmine, Confederate jasmine, star jasmine, there's lots of different names for them, lots of different varieties, but typically we call it Madison jasmine. It's a white flowering jasmine. It can grow pretty quickly. It's a vine. So think of all the different uses that you could use for vines, which is, growing on a trellis, on a fence, create privacy. And it blooms in the spring with an extremely fragrant bloom. So it puts on a big show, which has a big payoff because people will smell it from, yards away. They'll be like, whose yard smells like that? And so and it lasts a long time. It's a long blooming plant. So typically plants, have their little pop of color, a little show here and there, but this one seems to bloom for it feels like 4 to 6 weeks, if not longer, with an extremely gardenia-like fragrance. It's amazing. And then it's evergreen. So a lot of vines, lose their leaves. So you typically, have a vine and all of a sudden it forms up this trellis or, along a fence and then it drops all its leaves in the winter. Well, this one's evergreen. And in the winter, it'll kind of turn like a burgundy color. So it changes color. It's got a huge, big waxy green leaf. And it just puts on the growth. So it'll cover a fence. But what's nice about it too is it's not crazy heavy. You got to be light on your feet if you're going to be a wide receiver. So, it's not going to tear down a fence. It's not going to tear down an arbor or a trellis. It's a great long-lived vine and something that you're going to get results very quickly and be very happy with it very quickly.
I can't lie. That's my favorite vine. Whenever I plant a vine, it's definitely going to be that Madison Jasmine. So it's a great pick. So when I think of like wide receiver, you think of like your home run hitter, right? So I'm building out my roster just like you'd build out your landscape. You get your quarterback, your running back. So now I want some color. I want something that's going to produce for me for a long time. And so I think this is where I go to like a drift rose. So knockout roses became hugely popular and they were great. They were low maintenance roses. They'd grow, drought tolerant, extremely hardy. They started to have some issues with some different things. And so I think that's what kind of born drift roses are a little bit smaller. They don't get as big. But you want to talk about a pop of color. I mean, they start to open up, late April, early May, if they haven't already, kind of depending on how the spring goes. And they will bloom all season long, all summer long, into the fall. They'll bloom. I mean, people always say what blooms year round. Nothing blooms necessarily year round, right? But I always say drift roses get about as close to that as possible as far as you think about the length of bloom. And so I love drift roses come in all different colors now. You can get white, peach, pink, red, I mean, all these different colors, popcorn, which is like a yellow white. And so there's a lot of different varieties. And so very versatile in that respect. They don't get huge, but they give you a pop of color and they're kind of that home run hitter that can really bring the landscape home. So that's kind of what makes me associated with that wide receiver. And so the one downfall I would say to them is they are, deciduous, so they will defoliate. A lot of wide receivers don't like that cold weather. So, but when you're looking for the deep ball to bring it home, I think drift roses to me are kind of that home run hitter. You get a lot of production out of them. They give you that pop of color, very vibrant, very kind of extravagant, and so that's one of my favorites to incorporate into the landscape would be drift roses.
Excellent.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
Okay, now let's build this offensive line. Daniel.
All right, so this is going to be kind of contradictory to what an offensive lineman is. So offensive lineman, you think big, strong, stuff like that. Obviously, I was an offensive lineman. No, so for me, when I think of a support plant, it's kind of like the unsung hero, right? That's what we always talked about. You don't have statistics and stuff like that, but still extremely important. So I went back and forth. This one where I even thought about like boxwood and stuff like that. But so I went with a perennial salvia, one that I use a lot of is May Night Salvia. And so why I say it's contradictory is this is very small, but it packs a punch. And so to me, they're not going to be the star of the show. Nobody's going to be like, oh, I planned my entire landscape around a patch of salvia. But what it is it's a pop of color that can set off an entire area. And so that's why I say it's more of like kind of a support plant. You build out your roster, you build out your specimen plant, then you have your foundation plantings like we've talked about. You have your wide receivers, your home run hitters, but then maybe you want to incorporate a little bit of color contrast to kind of layer up your landscape. So it might be a little bit more of a support. It doesn't bloom all year, but it does give you that tight pop of color. Salvia, the one May night that I talk about, that's a purple. Almost gives you that kind of butterfly bush feel with how it blooms and stuff. But salvia in general, I mean, different salvia greggii, which is like hot lip salvia. You want to talk about hardy and easy to grow. That one will get pretty big, but it just prolific bloomer, has a red and white bloom. But so just salvia, that perennial pop of color, that's really the role they kind of play on your team is they kind of an accent color, a support player. It's not going to be the star of the show, but it's going to be an integral part of your landscape or your team in this regard. So a lot of times that's why people don't necessarily think they might get overlooked a little bit because they aren't the star of the show, but at the same time, the success of your landscape or team is going to be dependent on these because if you don't have those, then it's just going to look like a big green wall or something. So if you really want to layer it up and kind of mix in different textures and colors into your landscape, these play a very important role, which is why they could be overlooked, but still extremely important.
Excellent choice.
Yeah.
All right, you, Mike.
So can I take the entire group of annuals? No, I don't know. That would be. I would be.
It's very broad.
I would be. Having the certainly the best team on the block.
You pick it.
I'm going to pick petunias.
There you go.
So very similar to what Daniel's saying. You need some color. You need something that's going to put on a little bit of a show, and these kind of support the foundations that you've built in your landscape. So it's kind of a similar idea as to what Daniel's going with. Petunias are quick growing. They can fill in some space. The reason I like petunias is because you can change them year after year. So maybe you want to do pink this year. Maybe you want to do white next year. Maybe you want to do red, purple. There's so many different options. And whenever, and I'm sure Daniel does this a lot, but whenever I talk to a customer about a landscape, I'm always like, leave a little space for some annual color.
Absolutely.
And that's your support. That's where it's like, ooh, what are they going to do this year? What's Mike doing in his yard this year? Oh, he planted pink. He's going pink this year. Oh, he went white. So petunias are great. They have a splash of color. There's lots, of course, annual options, which is why I wanted the whole category. But I'll take petunias because they're one of the easiest ones. They grow pretty quick. You can do them in hanging baskets. You can do them in containers. Add a splash of color to the front of your landscape. Fill in some voids. It's always great to say, oh, well, I'm maybe not working on this area this year. I just need to fill some space. I just want to have something grow there this year. And annuals fit that bill. And petunias are one that, you don't have to plant a ton of them. I love begonias, but begonias form a little plant. I want something that's going to spread and fill some space. And like bubblegum petunia is one of my all-time favorites. The snowdrift white petunia is awesome. So there's lots and lots of different options there. So I'm going to go with petunias as my offensive line.
Good stuff. All right. Now we're going to turn to the defense. And this is actually the products that you may use in your garden and any kind of plant protection. Okay. So, Mike.
All right. So I'm going to go with one that I'm sure everybody knows that I'm probably going with, which is Super Thrive.
Ah, yeah.
So Super Thrive is a hard one to explain, and it's amazing. Whenever I talk to customers, it usually happens this way. Comes in, I don't have a leaf. I can't show you what's happening. Something's happening to my plant. Could be disease, could be insect, could be environmental. We're not quite sure. But I always try to urge them to take a bottle of Super Thrive home, because when you're not quite sure what's wrong with your plants, then you need to give it something. A lot of people think, let me feed it. It must need food. Sometimes that's the case, but pretty often it's struggling for some reason, and Super Thrive takes that shock off of that plant and just helps it rejuvenate. So it's a vitamin supplement. It's got all these different vitamins in there, and it really doesn't force a plant to grow. It just forces a plant to recoup a little bit. Is it going to cure an insect problem? No. Is it going to cure a fungus issue? No. But it certainly will help if you're not quite sure and you think you've eliminated those. So, I kind of wanted to go with triple action or something that you just spray everywhere. But this one is organic. It's safe. They use it when they're transplanting big trees, when you're moving shrubs, if you're moving some of your prized possession perennials or whatever it might be. Super Thrive is awesome. And so it's something that in my shed pharmacy, my garage pharmacy, I always have a bottle of Super Thrive, and I sell a ton of it because I think it's a great thing to have. Even when you're just planting a new plant, throw some Super Thrive on it. You can't use too much. It goes a long way. It's like 1/4 of a teaspoon per gallon. I mean, that's almost impossible to measure. So I usually just put a teaspoon or maybe a tablespoon sometimes. You can't put too much. You can use it as a foliar spray. You can use it just right at the root system. It's just a great thing to really help rejuvenate plants. My favorite story to tell is I took a huge camellia, cut it back down to almost a stump, used probably too much Super Thrive, but it didn't hurt it. And then within 2 years, that camellia was 8 by 8 and was blooming more than you could ever. You barely even see any green leaves on it. It had so many blooms in the spring. So it just helps kick plants back into grow mode. And that's what a defense does, right? It just jump starts you, and you can't win a championship without a good defense.
Fact. That's a fact.
I like Super Thrive. All right.
So I was debating between two. Mike mentioned the other one I was debating, which was triple action, which is another versatile one. So I hope the commissioner will allow this as far as a product, but I'm going to go with rocks. Sounds pretty basic, right? And defense is a very basic application of football. But all right, so when you talk about protecting your landscapes, one of the biggest issues with landscapes are things like drainage, and so that's where rocks to me are the first thing that come in. So when it comes to making sure you have, whether that's well-drained soil, whether that's protecting against molds and voles with soil perfector, which is essentially small jagged rocks. It could be a dry riverbed that allows the water to cut through so it doesn't saturate the root ball of the plants. It doesn't wash out your bed. Rocks are very versatile. They're becoming increasingly popular, very low maintenance. And so, and then again, you talk about like weed prevention was another thing you mentioned. If you want to have a low maintenance, nothing's weed proof, but if you put down like, a good layer of landscape fabric, you top dress that with a couple inches of rock and you keep it clean, you don't let a lot of stuff blow in there and break down and turn into dirt, it's going to be fairly low maintenance and a fairly weed free area. And then a lot of times, again, just aesthetically, I'm a big fan of rocks. So they can play an integral role of your team. And if you really don't have a showstopper quarterback, you don't have the running backs and the wide receivers you need, your defense can carry your team. I mean, look at the 85 Bears, you have these teams that have carried defenses that have carried teams to championships. And if you can't get anything to grow because it's a swamp, you put a bunch of rock with some boulders and stuff like there, all of a sudden you can kind of create your centerpiece can become your defense, which is where I see like boulders and rocks and things like that. So that's why I would say rocks, extremely versatile, very low maintenance, reliable, and they really can carry the team if you do have a lot of problem areas where I always say a good defense can cover up a lot of inefficiencies of a bad offense. So I think rocks can do that with landscape as well.
I sympathize with that as an Eagles fan this past season. The defense is quite important. Okay, now we're on to the special teams, the wild card pick. Daniel, would you like to go with yours first?
All right, so for mine, I am going to go with Podocarpus. So Podocarpus to me, it's kind of a unique plant that becoming more popular. It has kind of a beach feel, a beach vibe with its growth habit. Kind of has like a long, skinny, kind of needle type leaf, evergreen, but it has a really unique growth habit. There are different ones that get different shapes and sizes, but for me, like the Mackie upright Podocarpus, I actually, we have a couple properties where privacy is always important, right? And so these they're pretty narrow, but will get pretty tall. And so again, when you think of like a wild card, it's kind of a unique plant that can help you really set off your final landscape, your final team, whatever the case may be. And so we've actually bordered properties, we've bordered driveways, we've bordered different things with these Podocarpus, and they create essentially a green screen that you can keep at 5 feet tall, 6 feet tall, all the way up to 8, 10 feet tall, depending on the plant or depending on the variety. And so Podocarpus to me are a little bit of a wild card. You can even use them as a specimen. I mean, I've put them as the anchors on 2 corners of a house. Yep. So when you think of a wild card, just very versatile, can fit the bill and solve a lot of different needs and can kind of give you that spark. If you have a boring landscape and you want something to kind of set it off, can give you a tropical feel, beachy feel, but it also can just be a dense evergreen that you can mix into a colonial garden and stuff like that. So when I think wild card, I think can kind of fit into a lot of different areas, kind of give you that spark. So that's what I think Podocarpus, becoming increasingly more popular, one of my favorite plants to use, and we use a ton of them. So I went with Podocarpus.
Good choice. Mike?
Wild card. I really had a hard time figuring out which one, and I'm still not quite sure until I actually say the word. I think of, special teams are special and different people, they're the kickers and the people that, do one function like the long snapper. But the team always loves them. It's a super important part, but it's one that you would miss, right? You wouldn't see it a whole lot. And then all of a sudden you're like, what is that? So I'm going to go with, contorted filbert. Contorted filbert is a really strange, unusual plant. It is very unrecognizable in the summer when it's just got green leaves on it. It almost can somewhat be ugly. But kind of crinkly leaves, kind of really cool looking, just green shrub. You can prune it up into a small tree. Okay. But then the leaves fall off in the fall and winter, and then it exposes this extremely contorted branch structure, like super curly, grows in any form or function or funky way. One of the common names for it is Harry Lauder's walking stick, because it's got this really cool walking stick look to it, especially if you can get a big one. But it's just very unusual and different. And when it blooms in the spring, it's kind of got these little catkin things that kind of come out of the buds. It's very unusual, very different. Something that you might walk by in your landscape multiple times and not notice. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh wait, There it is. It is super special. And it's just different for me. I just love to use it. You can use the branches in arrangements. So people love it in floral arrangements. I love to use it at Christmas time to, kind of weave into a wreath or use a big stick of it in a porch pot. So it's got a lot of different uses, a lot of special uses, things that maybe don't quite fit the landscape. It can be a specimen, but it might not be noticed all the time. So it's just an unusual, different one. It's special to me, and I just think it's fun.
Alrighty. Okay. Now, before we go to the final rosters, I am exercising my commissioner powers. Daniel, I will offer you Mike's pick for yours straight up. What do you say?
For the special teams?
I'm sorry, the whole roster.
Wow. Now,
I've thrown a wild card.
Team for team. As much as I do respect Mike's picks, and he has some between the boxwoods, the hydrangeas, the Madison Jasmine, and he's speaking to my heart here. I think he was doing it intentionally, but he has some great picks. But I do like where we went in some different areas, and I think I'm going to stick with my team.
Okay, Mike.
Yeah, I'm sticking with my team. It's a surefire winner. Like
such confidence.
If anything, we're meeting in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, wow. I'll give him that. That's a good one. That's a good one.
All right. Now,
so who wins? Who wins the Super Bowl?
Do we get a final argument?
I will allow one final argument. Daniel, make your case.
All right. My final argument is everything starts and ends with the quarterback. It's your specimen. It's your specimen. And I think I probably robbed Japanese Maple from Mike here. That's near and dear to his heart. I know that's his specimen.
I can tell he's really broken up about
it. And so I think that's where, when you're building your roster, you're building your team, it all comes down to that. And what says specimen showstopper more than a Japanese maple? I don't know.
It does bloom. Are they noticeable blooms? No. What does everybody think of when they think of their garden? They want blooms, right? What the number one request that a customer asks for?
Color.
I want some color. I want some blooms. All right. I say no more. Hydrangeas are the quarterback of the future.
This is a tough choice. And Daniel, you're right. The quarterback is very important.
It is.
However, personally, hydrangea is the better quarterback. And I love the Harry, say it for me, I can't remember.
Harry Lauder's walk.
It was obviously memorable.
So, winner is Mike with the
I can't argue with that. Nicely done. Nicely done.
That's so funny. All right, Mike, you are the winner.
Sweet.
So for this NFL draft, now I may have to do it again next year though. So, Daniel,
you get a new draft every year.
You do get a new draft every year. So
I'm going to Disney World.
You're confident for the Super Bowl. So all right, well that is it for our draft.
Sweet. Well, thank you guys. That was fun.
That
was something one. Different, and we've done a couple of the
Now let's hope the Cowboys don't mess up the actual draft.
Right. Bros versus bros. So we'll probably do another one of those.
Yeah.
And we gotta look at the overall tally and see where we're at.
There you go.
But we always have good battles, and thank you all. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks for listening. Rate, review, comment, leave comments. Let us know. Hopefully you're watching us on YouTube. If you are, then subscribe. And then hopefully you're listening to us on a podcast somewhere. So we appreciate you, and we'll see you next week. What are we talking about next week?
We're doing tomatoes next week.
Oh, tomatoes. All right. It's starting to warm up. It's tomato season. We'll see you next week.